And we're live.
Cool.
My name is Andrew.
And my name is Lalo.
The topic we are going to discuss is apologists for Islam versus new atheism. As of late, I've seen that Lalo has had quite a number of issues with the popular YouTube broadcaster, Cenk Uygur, on his Young Turks network. And especially the guests that he's actually sort of brought onto the Young Turks network, especially CJ Werleman. I'm going to be asking Lalo a few questions. This is going to be an ongoing podcast over the next couple of months and weeks. And Lalo he's the other main contributor to this. So we're going to be sort of talking about different topics. So we'll get to them sort of as the weeks progress. But the main topic tonight is fundamentalist Islam apologists, and new atheism. So just if you want to just quickly recap with the initial spat, like the initial sort of statements that you took issue with that Cenk Uygur had actually sort of made. Like I noticed a couple of weeks ago on your Twitter feed that like the one thing that actually really sort of lit the match was Cenk Uygur. He was talking about a gun store owner in Florida.
Can you speak up? I don't know if everybody's going to be able to hear you, but I have trouble hearing you.
Okay, well, I'm gonna. Well, that's why I got this. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's much better.
I'm gonna. Okay, so, as I was saying, I saw like a number of weeks ago that you were commenting on a video that the Young Turks had released in relation to a Florida gun store owner who had designated his store a Muslim-free zone.
Right.
And you, like, in the video, I saw the video myself. Cenk Uygur, he was taking issue with the new atheists such as Sam Harris and probably to a lesser degree Christopher Hitchens. He was basically he was deriding these people for being Islamophobic.
Mm-hmm.
And we had like a lot of people actually they'd be very a lot of people who would actually be sort of into this topic. They would be well acquainted with Christopher Hitchens and Sam Harris's views on Islam. Could you just sort of like in a very quick rundown, like could you give me your own sort of interpretation of Cenk Uygur's comments on this initial topic of the gun store owner, and then furthermore on Sam Harris?
Right. Well, there's quite a few things there. I mean, I have to give a lot of context to my feelings about that and what Cenk Uygur has said, because it's not. I mean, this is been going on for me a couple weeks now. That I've been addressing what he said on Twitter, but it's gone a little like farther back for me, at least. My issues he's had initially with Sam Harris, and now with atheists in general.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people have had issues with him since the Sam Harris debate.
Mm-hmm.
So initially, I should say first of all, I am a person who has seen the Young Turks for quite a while. It's not something I stepped into. Somebody sent me a link and I didn't like what he said. I've seen the Young Turks since like 2009, and very regularly would I watch it. and I was very into in general the opinions Cenk Uygur and the people on the Young Turks had. I thought they were very astute politically. Cenk always was a atheist and always criticized religion.
He won an award for that, didn't he?
Yeah, the Emperor Has No Clothes Award. I think it's from the Freedom from Religion Foundation. So, but one of the things I always did notice about, did you do something there? Because I'm getting like an echo.
Can you hear an echo?
Yeah. Not anymore. Okay, now
Okay.
it's fine. Yeah. So, but there is a lot of background to this. Like, for example, Cenk Uygur, if you check his channel, and from what I've seen in his channel, he's never really said, despite being an atheist and having gotten an award for it and everything, he's never had really positive things to say about atheists themselves. I don't think anybody could really find a video where he says in the past anything positive about Richard Dawkins, about Christopher Hitchens, about Sam Harris. So he was always very quiet about them or any really other atheists. I think the only video I saw which was from quite a few years ago was about Ayaan Hirsi Ali, and it was a negative video. So he didn't really have anything positive to say about them, which is very strange considering he's very critical of religion. But there's something about the harshness that they take towards religion that he didn't like, I imagine.
Sure.
And that has become more clear over the time. Now, he finally started to address one atheist in particularly a lot, which was Sam Harris, after the debate with Ben Affleck.
Sure.
And that spawned a lot of videos where he gave commentary. And on top of that, he invited, right after that, two very particular people, which everybody's now familiar with, which I was not really familiar with prior to the Sam Harrison, which was Reza Aslan and CJ Werleman. Specifically Werleman, nobody had heard of him. I had never heard of him, but suddenly he got invited, and he got a really long interview with Cenk on the Young Turks. And between Reza and CJ and independent videos of Cenk, there was an infinite amounts of misconceptions about what Sam Harris says or in his opinions. I would summarize them all to basically taking everything Sam Harris has said and hasn't said, because they just plain lied about things it does not hold as his opinion. But even in those cases, they all universally have the same problem, that they quote him as saying all Muslims. I made a video of this in my own YouTube channel. The first video I ever made was addressing this, was Cenk Uygur talking about Sam Harris. And basically, I just showed time after time how he took a quote from Sam Harris talking about majority of Muslims, large number of Muslims, or whatever, Islam, something like that. And he would say, oh, Sam Harris is talking about all Muslims.
Sure.
And it just goes from being maybe true, depending on what he said, because if he says he wants to, sometimes they say Sam Harris wants to nuke all Muslims. He doesn't want to nuke all Muslims or any Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
That's a totally different subject there. But even in those cases, it goes from a true statement, which is a majority, whatever, depending on the number. You can check a Pew Research study and say, this amount of Muslims in Egypt are approve of death of apostasy, this number. And you say that, and it's a true statement as far as the research showed, as far as that statistic showed. And then someone else will quote you as saying, oh, he said all Muslims believe in death for apostasy, even though you said, this 80% in whatever country, and that was continually done to Sam Harris, and nobody really liked that. And I think, and a lot of people, and they would say, oh, Sam Harris's acolytes, Sam Harris's followers, Sam Harris's whatever, No, it's not about being an acolyte or a follower, although a lot of people will admit to being a fan of his writing. I am. But I think more than that is that we identify with this happening to us. You know, that at least I do. And I think a lot of people do. A lot of people on Twitter or YouTube or Facebook identify with saying something very true about the world we live in today, that there are a lot of Muslims in the world and religious people in the world in general, Christians or Jews or whatever, that holds a very bad belief. And then some group of that people who hold that bad belief will act on it. And we don't really like being quoted as saying, oh, you think all Muslims or all whatever are terrorists. No, nobody likes to have that happen to them because it's not true. It's not what we said. We don't believe that. But it's a nice way of dismissing the person, dismissing their argument, you know? So, and I think that a lot of people identified with that as, you know, what are you doing? So the problem especially was, even though nobody knew C.J. Werleman, Reza Aslan has grown some fame, but a lot of people were familiar with Cenk Uygur, including me. Yeah. And a lot of people agree with a lot of what he says, but didn't really like how he was treating Sam Harris. Mm-hmm. And I myself gave him the benefit of the doubt for a very long time after his conversation with him, that maybe he was just, maybe because he hadn't really read anything Sam Harris has said or watched any of his lectures or debates, which he admitted at some point he had commented but hadn't read anything Sam Harris had written. But then he read a little bit, I imagine a very little bit. I doubt he read anything more than a couple of blog posts, but he read something. And then he had Sam Harris on his program. They had a 3-hour interview. And then after that, he's recently decided to keep going with what he says about Sam Harris. He said recently, well, not recently, you know, a few months ago, he said again, Sam Harris wants to destroy with nuclear bombs the Muslim world, or Muslims, or some nonsense like that. He said it again. And Sam Harris addressed it on Twitter, and he said, I can see my conversation with Cenk Uygur meant nothing. And now and when you have a 3-hour conversation with somebody telling you, I never wrote that I preemptively want to destroy the Middle East with nuclear weapons. I'm asking myself, you know, a hypothetical question, what would happen? I've asked myself that hypothetical question. I used to live in Korea. I studied Korean. I studied Korean history for many years. I've written a lot about it in university classes. And I often ask myself in writing, ask the question, what would happen if there was some kind of strong nuclear conflict between the United States and North Korea? That's a perfectly valid question. North Korea is a very insane actor in the world, right? So, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it's a perfectly valid hypothetical question. You can't assume that North Korea is going to act with nuclear weapons the same way, you know, maybe India or Israel might, or, you know, any country where the politicians you might not like them, but they're at least, you know, who maybe went to university, or, you know, there's some kind of rationality behind the North Koreans don't have that. So Sam Harris asked the question, you know, what would happen if an Osama bin Laden, somebody who we don't consider a rational actor, had nuclear weapons? It's a perfectly valid question. And ask yourself, you know, kind of scenarios, how you might act in that. It's totally hypothetical. It's a valid question. People in political science ask themselves this all the time. And just for asking that question, he's portrayed as saying, oh, you want to destroy all Muslims, you want to kill all Muslims. That is really stupid. It's very malicious. It shows very ignorant people. For Cenk Uygur to have said it not just before meeting Sam Harris, but after meeting him, and way after meeting him, you know, I think a lot of people have had enough of it. It just lies at that point. You know, it's just slander. It's not a misunderstanding anymore. You know, it could have been a misunderstanding. It's not. And now, as you said, there's been a few more. He's recently had quite a few more videos where he went now from addressing Sam Harris. he also addressed again Ayan Hirsi Ali in another video, went off to attack her again. And now he's generalized it to what he calls atheist fundamentalists, new atheists, blah blah blah. He'll say atheists. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that he's distinguishing some atheists from others, and he says atheist fundamentalists or new atheists. To me, I don't even know what that means. It says new atheists. I know that C.J. Werleman or some other people use new atheists to refer to people like Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris. Nobody really that I've seen who I interact with on Twitter or these writers have ever identified themselves as new atheists. Is totally the term they use. And so for example, the video you were talking about of a gun shop owner, I think he owned a firing range, right? That you could go and fire guns, right?
Yeah.
And he didn't want to. He decided to not allow Muslims to either buy guns there or fire there, which is, I mean, pretty silly. It's just you can't really just, it's his right, I guess. I don't know legally if he has the right to discriminate that way or not. That would depend on the law. It's not my area. The only thing that we could judge him on is it morally correct. To me, it seems silly because you'll have a lot of Christian fundamentalists in the United States, committing acts of terrorism or murder as well as Muslims. So it's not really it's not really a practical idea, but it's the guy's right. And if he wants to act that way, that's his right. Now to go on to Cenk Uygur, who, if he wants to say this guy is a bigot and that's really stupid and it's unpractical, I would agree with him. But he decides in a story about a guy who he didn't actually say he was Christian or not. Even Cenk Uygur says that he didn't know if he was an atheist or a Christian, probably a Christian. I don't know. Well, this is a total assumption. Who's being bigoted against Muslims? Cenk Uygur decides to start talking about new atheists and bigotry from atheists on a story from a guy who's pretty much a redneck, to say it pejoratively, who's being bigoted against Muslims. He relates it to atheists. Why? What was the relation? This is not the only video he had. I forget the other video where he does the same thing, but there was also a story. It was also the story about, I think it was Dick Cheney, where he again. It was the video where he said for the second time that where Sam Harris wants to nuke the Muslim world. And it was a story about conservative Republicans, and he starts talking about atheists and new atheists and atheist fundamentalists and things like that. Why in the story about conservative Republicans does he talk about that? Where is this dangerous group of atheists, conservative Republicans? I don't know of this group. I really don't. I don't see stories, or I can't really name any people that I've seen, and I follow this a lot. I don't know if you can. I don't know if anyone else can. If there is leaders of this, a group of this, let me know. But I don't know of leaders or groups in the United States of conservative, very bigoted against Muslim atheists. These atheist fundamentalists. So and Cenk Uygur can't say that Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, these people represent conservative Republican interest. No, the polar opposites. So why is he making this connection at all? And he's doing it a lot. So and by presenting a story of a guy who's being bigoted against Muslims and saying you can't come to my firing range in my gun shop and fire guns if you're a Muslim, and he starts talking about atheism. So people will naturally associate that, right? They'll create a connection. Oh, atheist.
There seems to be no.
This bigot in a redneck is being bigoted, and now we're talking about atheists. So there's clearly a connection because Cenk Uygur is talking about it, right? He's talking about it in the same video, so there's a connection. What the connection is, I don't know. He just starts talking about it. And in that same video you mentioned about the gun shop owner, I mean, what is it like? if it's a 10-minute video, let's say 8 minutes of it is him just talking about about atheists and atheist bigotry and things like that. And at some point he says, atheists want, you guys, he says something like, even if you don't say all Muslims, that's what you mean. And you want to attack them. What do you want to do with them? You want to attack them. So he's taking one story, starts talking about something else, addresses people who are talking about Islam, and saying, even if you don't mean all Muslims, you do mean all Muslims. I mean, what kind of defense is anyone supposed to give to this, right? How are you supposed to defend yourself against a person who's associating with people who you have no association with? Sam Harris, myself, I imagine the overwhelming majority of people who consider themselves atheists in the United States don't relate to middle America rednecks in firing ranges who want to blanketly push out Muslims from businesses. I don't imagine there's a lot of atheists in the United States who would identify with that guy, right? And so to begin with, we're being associated with people we don't agree with. Mm-hmm. And then you're being told that, well, even if you clarify your position, you actually don't mean what you're saying. You're actually a closet racist, bigot, Islamophobe. Tough, sad day for you. You can't clarify it enough. You've been stamped with the seal of approval of racist, and you can't unbrand yourself. So people are getting yeah. I think it's maybe your microphone pointing at the.
No. It should be okay. Sure, I put the jack into the headphones as well, so it should be fine. Right. I suppose what I was actually just going to say was, I would actually, about 99% of everything that you've actually sort of said, I would actually agree. I'd agree with. As far as
because that's why I went for the argument.
Yeah, the only one person who is a personality that actually has made a point of targeting Islam in their diatribes that is an atheist is Pat Condell, and you've obviously heard about Pat Condell.
I haven't seen I can't say I've seen too much of his videos. I've seen my whole life, I'd seen maybe like 5 or 6 of his videos, and his videos are very good. They're very, very good. I can't say I agree with everything he says, but he's very he clearly thinks about it a lot. He clearly points out certain contradictions and hypocrisy, especially from liberals, liberal religious people, as well as liberal secular people.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a very he's a very good YouTuber.
I subscribed to his channel for quite a while, and there's one particular video he made. I can't remember it for the life of me, but what he said was, it was probably just so disgusting that I just said, we're done. I can't listen to this guy anymore.
Are you disgusted with what he said?
Yeah, with what Pat Condell said, okay. And I probably only seen glimpses of what he said once or twice ever since I unsubscribed from his channel and stopped watching him. Yeah. Now, with regards to sort of the whole Sam Harris military,
could you tell me what it was that he said that?
Honestly, I can't remember. But
it was. I imagine more than an idea you didn't like. It must have been something that was clearly racist or something like that. Clearly just bigoted, right?
It must have been I remember when I was subscribed to him. He was very careful to. It wasn't even just him being careful. It was actually he tried to sort of point out errors and fallacies that the mainstream media were actually making about a case that was being very well publicized at the time. Like
Right.
there was I think it was in some city in North England. I think it was either Leeds or it was somewhere in Yorkshire, I think. Um, there was gangs of Muslim men, and the convictions for these men have actually only been handed down this week. But there was gangs of Muslim men in cities in England who were grooming teenage girls for sex and prostitution. And from what I can remember, the media, they weren't saying Muslim, but they were saying Asian.
But
They were Muslim.
okay.
And Pat Condell, he was particularly outraged by this. They actually took to YouTube, and he said, like, you know, how dare you conflate Sikhs and Hindus with these Muslim monsters?
But he meant those Muslim monsters.
Yeah.
Not that Muslims are monsters.
Yeah, I would give him the benefit of the doubt and say yes.
Right.
But honestly, like he has constantly sort of gone on the offensive against Islam, as it were. To be do I disagree with them for doing so? No, not really, because I genuinely think that all organized religion, Christianity and Judaism, is abhorrent. But like, I really wish I could remember what it was Pat Condell actually sort of said.
Well, I mean, let's just go on what you told me about the story.
Yeah.
And speaking completely with the notion that I didn't hear what he said, I don't know the story well. But let's just talk about the story as you have placed it, and I'll give you, like, my opinion based on that. But just to be clear, I don't know the story, or I didn't see the video. But for example, him talking about let's say a Muslim group grooming certain girls to be prostitutes, was it you said?
Essentially.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, that's the story. Now, is it necessary to call them Muslims, the people doing that? I in that case, I'm not a person who's gonna say every time a Muslim does something bad, you have to call him a Muslim, because Muslim is an identifier, right?
Yeah.
In one aspect of a person, it's not who they are in all aspects. They could, if they were born in Britain, they could say, these British guys. If they were white, they could say these white guys. If they were engineers, they could say these engineers. So if you call them Muslims, it's an identifier as to one aspect they are, right? Which is in a religious sense. And so if you call them Muslim, in that story, you really have to put in the context of if what they're doing is associated to their religion. Because if they were engineers, you would call them engineers if the story was related to what they're doing. If we're talking about the construction of a building, you would say these engineers. You wouldn't say these Muslims, right? Because it's in the context of the story, and the correct identifier in that case is engineer. So, but I don't really see necessarily that guys grooming girls to become prostitutes necessarily has anything to do with them being Muslim, unless you really know that's the case. Now, I would give a little leeway to Pat Connolly, very, very, very little. So not leeway, but just kind of sympathy. Even though I disagree with him, I would disagree with him if it's everything I know about the story is true and that's how he said it and all that. But I have a little bit more sympathy towards people in the UK or Europe in general, because they are dealing with problems with Islam and Muslims that I don't have to face. And actually it's something that people in the United States don't have to face, I would say, either. And it's not because they have a smaller minority of Muslims in the United States. I would say it's also because I think the Muslims in the United States are very different, in the sense that I think a lot. I don't know. I can't say that I can't say I know this from reading statistics, but it's the impression I have is that a lot of the Muslims in the United States are one, they've been there for generations, right? They're not immigrants that have immediately come from Muslim states like what is happening in Europe. In Europe, people are coming, right now from Muslim states, and in turn, the people in the United States, they've been there. A lot of them are second or third generation Muslims. So they're Muslims, of course, they're Muslim, but they grew up. They were born and grew up in a society of the United States with the concepts of the United States, along with with Islam, and that makes them very, a very different concept for them, and they're acting right. So, and in turn, the how should I say, the conflicts they see in let's say just in the UK is with people who are coming from less educated, more fundamentalist societies, not secular, not very well educated, not, how do I say this, economically more developed nations. And that makes a big difference, I think, because when you take Muslims from, Pakistan or Egypt, or any of those countries, and you put them in the scenario of the UK, they go from a very much poorer, much more conservative society into a society they don't really get, and they get very, they push away from it with much stronger hands, right? And so I think the people in Europe are maybe feel they're much more on the offensive and being attacked than Americans feel. And I don't think Americans often sympathize with Europeans in that way. I try to, but also I'm not a fan of being anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim as people. You have to throw them out of our country. What are you doing here? I'm not a person who believes in those kinds of ideas. And so, but I mean, go ahead. So
I slightly disagree.
Yeah.
If you actually look at a lot of the recruits to ISIS, they're coming from Dearborn, Michigan, and if you go back to, I think it was 2012, the perpetrators of the Boston Marathon bombing, they were Chechen Muslims,
right?
Dzhokhar and Tamerlan Tsarnaev,
right?
And actually just sort of looking at specifically the Boston Marathon bombers, Tamerlan, the older brother, he had emigrated to the United States sometime, I think, in the late 90s, and when he was sort of I think he was probably like a teenager when he emigrated. He sort of had a feeling of isolation, like when he was in the United States. And I remember a while ago, there was I think it was put up on Fora TV, or it was probably somewhere else. This one guy, I wish I had a citation for you. This one guy, he actually, he compared Muslims in the United States today to Catholics in the United States in the middle of the 19th century. Specifically with the Know Nothing or the nativist movement. We have, well, we don't. The Americans have the Tea Party, who were shouting and screaming about, first of all, it was the Muslim Brotherhood, and now it's ISIS. And they're pretty much saying that all Muslims within and without our country must be they must be sort of suspected of all sorts of things, and we must we must make them feel like they're sort of 2 inches tall, that kind of thing.
Right. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, if you isolate it to instances of terrorism, yes, but the story you gave of the group grooming girls to be prostitutes isn't an example of terrorism. It's more a social conflict, you know.
Yeah.
So just to, you know, for the purposes of this conversation, let's exclude all acts of terrorism in Europe and the United States. The social conflicts of the communities between Muslim and non-Muslim, that's what I was more referring to. I mean, also in the United States, being a Muslim in a conservative family, you might feel very isolated. That's true.
Yeah.
But the isolation of much bigger communities in Europe that are first generation, you know, sometimes from the country, and they're much bigger groups, right? And these groups, for example, in the UK, I read that I don't know if this was still happening, but that the England was allowing certain Sharia courts in communities, you know, and instead of a person getting divorced legally with the government of England, they get divorced in their own small community, and a lot of things like this were being allowed, even if they found out that, you know, certain cases were being tried in the community of England, they would allow, okay, you guys can do your own thing, right? Because okay, you guys are Muslim, right? I don't see that being tolerated in the United States, you know, because that shouldn't be done. That, you know, the protections of the laws in the United States or England should apply to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is so I think they're facing something very different. You know, I often say that that people talk a lot about terrorism against Americans, but really the strongest threat of extreme Islam is one in the Middle East. That's where it's strongest, and then second would be Europe. You know, and then after that you might talk about the United States. It's not the strongest threat of radical Islam in the United States, right? In the United States, there's been they haven't tried to ban the burqa. They haven't tried to ban what is it, these pillars in mosques that they banned in some countries in Europe. I can't say exactly right now, but I think it was in Denmark and France. These things haven't been tried in the United States because I don't really think that people feel the same level of threat from the Muslims in their community. You know, I don't see I unless we're talking about very, very conservative Americans, but I don't think if we're talking about, you know, in a very the most urban places of, you know, let's say Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago. I'm not, you know, let's not talk about Kansas and Texas, you know, in New York. I don't really think, I don't get the feeling that people are really angsty to be like, they don't feel really threatened by their Muslim community. Recently, you know, Texas had this protest against the mosque, where a bunch of bikers showed up with guns. You know, that might happen in Texas or something. I don't see that happening. I don't feel like this is this big feeling of threat from the rest of the United States. You know what I mean? But but to go back to to what we were initially talking about of Cenk Uygur, the problem there is that you gave, for example, examples of the Tea Party or very, you know, discriminatory groups in the UK or something like that. But again, we're conflating two totally different groups. You know, the Tea Party isn't an atheist group whatsoever. You know, so to continue the story of what happened with Cenk Uygur, like, so me seeing these videos of him not just attacking Sam Harris in a very unjust way, but
Yeah.
but going after atheists, even though he says atheist fundamentalist, I don't know what the fuck an atheist fundamentalist is, to be honest, what he's referring to there. And I think he's referring to any atheist that criticizes Islam. And he'll say, well, I criticize Islam too. But he does it. I've noticed he does it in a very lukewarm way. I just saw day before yesterday. I saw his interview again with Reza Aslan.
Yeah.
Which is almost an hour long.
Mm-hmm.
And there you can watch that video. There's a bunch of other videos, but definitely you can see in that video he says it many times. And I know this is I can speak with assurance now that this is his opinion, that he'll criticize Islam. He'll criticize Christianity. He's against all religions, as he says. But he doesn't like, and he says it very specifically, he doesn't like Sam Harris saying that Islam is worse than other religions. That is his problem with Sam Harris and other atheists that he's calling atheist fundamentalists. That if you can say all these religions are terrible, you can say they're all violent, but don't you dare say that Islam is more violent. They have to be equal. They have to be. You have to say Buddhism is equally violent to Islam. If not, then you're a bigot. Then you have something.
An Islamophobe. Yeah.
You make it personal,
Yeah.
and that is I mean, intellectually, that is just absolutely.
It's a disaster.
Stupid beyond belief.
Yeah.
I imagine he's taking this. He's taking it very. A lot of people are now saying. I've seen people say he's not an. I'm very critical of him now. I see people saying he's not an atheist. I'm not going to say that. I believe he's an atheist. I believe he's not a Muslim, and all that. I do think he's engaging in a lot of identity politics, though. I think he sees those criticisms of saying Muslims are more violent or that the Quran is more violent as an attack on people that he feels aren't violent, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is, I understand his concern, but we're not talking about Fox News saying all Muslims are terrorists, right? We're talking about saying that reading the Quran and then reading the teachings of the Buddha, one can read those two things and say there's more mentions, more dogma, more orders, more commandments towards violence than the Buddha gave. That's very, I mean, if we're talking about Buddhism, that's beyond obvious. I don't know if you studied Buddhism. I have. It's just beyond obvious. We could talk for 2 hours or 3 hours, and I could give you my opinion as to why I'm not a big fan of Buddhism either.
Yeah.
Because, for example, just to give an example, the Buddha said, even if a person is cutting off your arms and legs, I think it was, you shouldn't hurt them back. I don't consider that a moral action at all. I don't think somebody who's cutting off your arms and legs and you should do nothing is a peaceful act. I'm not a pacifist in that way. I used to say, when I was younger, I'm a pacifist. It sounds cool. But if you put it into practical terms as this kind of absolutism of pacifism, it becomes kind of complicity to violence. If I see a girl getting raped, I'm going to say, I can't attack the attacker because then that's going against pacifism. No, the pacifist action there would be to attack the attacker. You know? Yeah. So I'm not a pacifist in the absolute sense because I don't think that's passive. I don't think that's peaceful. So I have my issues with Buddhism as well. I don't think this absolute peacefulness to Buddhism is moral either. It doesn't demand violence. It's to the point where the non-demand of violence becomes complicit, but it's not commanding violence, right?
Yeah, sure.
And so and you could even read the Old Testament of the Bible, and you could say, you know what, the Quran is more violent than the Old Testament of the Bible is less violent than the Quran. You could say that and be wrong. Maybe one is more violent than the other, right? Maybe the Old Testament is more violent. Maybe the Quran is more violent. Read them, make up your own mind. It doesn't matter to me. But I would never call a person a bigot or an Islamophobe for coming to the conclusion that one is more violent than the other. That's ridiculous. I can read any two books and come and say one is worse, more violent, more stupid, more ridiculous, more non-true, more historically accurate. I can say a million things, one being more than the other. Why is it that when we're talking about two religious books, I have to say they're all equal? What is this? If we're talking about economics, for example, there are communists, there are capitalists, there are socialists, there are libertarians, there's a bunch of stuff, right? in the name of non-bigotry, I have to say that communism and capitalism and socialism are all equal. That they all are equally violent. They're all equally effective. They're all equally blah blah blah. And I have to say that the only problem is of communism are the communist fundamentalists. That's ridiculous. Communism on any level doesn't work. Now, of course, yeah, thousands of people are going to tell me, no, you're wrong. I'm a communist, and you're wrong. And capitalism is the destruction of the world. Fine, that's fine. I'm not going to call that person a bigot or a racist against capitalists, and I'm not going to call anybody a bigot against communists or a bigot against socialists for saying one is worse than the other. That's ridiculous. And
you're probably just calling stupid.
Is just like religion. You know, it's a set of ideas, and one refers to the economy of a country, the other refers to the order or whatever. But to not say these are all equal in any sense is, I mean, that's just ridiculous. And that's what I've seen is his issue with Sam Harris and atheist fundamentalists. You know, and sorry, I'm not gonna put up with that, and I don't like hearing that. Yeah. I don't like hearing that as a person who's actually. I'm not a person who's just I've interacted with Muslim people or religious people and I don't like them. No, I'm a person who's read the Quran. I'm a person who's read the Bible. I'm a person who's dedicated a lot of their time reading the history of religion, reading about the religion. You know, I'm not a scholar. I'm not an expert, but I would say I know a lot. I would say I've done a good amount of research on my own. You know, I'm sure there are people who know plenty more than I do, but I've come to the conclusions I've come to reading books and saying, you know, this idea I find more violent than the other. This idea I find more reprehensible than the other, more untrue than the other. And I'm not going to. And anybody who tells me, oh, you're a bigot if you say that, you know, or you're a racist, they can fuck off. That's ridiculous. I'm not going to hear that, you know. So,
well, actually, here's a thought for you. You know, I suppose we can actually we could probably juxtapose this position to I don't know, Gamergate. Right. Fair enough. I know I'm probably taking this in a completely different direction, but you know, right. You have you have all these people.
Very different subjects with very
yeah, but I suppose you'll sort of find people will really take an idea to some sort of extreme, no matter what the idea is.
Right. Yeah. I'll summarize it this way. You tell me if you agree. I mean, I can see a parallel there in this sense. There are, let's say, feminists, or better choice of words, because a lot of these women, I hardly consider them feminists in the sense that they actually care about women's rights. But let's say
I just call them busybodies.
Right. Well, let's be nice to them. Let's call them feminists, just to be kind. So some feminists say they see video games, which a lot of them haven't. But let's say they've seen these video games, they play these video games, and they see a very attractive woman in the video game. In very skimpy clothing. She's showing most of her breasts. She has very, big butt, big breasts, and she's being very sexualized in the game. So they say, this is very sexist. Another person says, well, I don't consider that sexist. To just say a woman is a beautiful woman is an object of sexism herself is kind of a weird thing to say. That's kind of almost saying, like, if you see a very attractive woman walking down the street, she's a symbol of sexism. That's very odd. Yeah. Another thing to say that encourages sexual violence. Of course, I mean, studies
it's absurd.
Studies on sexual violence and violence in general, originating from TV shows or movies or video games, that's been debunked for decades, and it comes back every decade with some people. Some people will say video games are making people violent. That's ridiculous. People want to talk about gun violence compared to the United States and Japan. Well, Japan is the country that plays crazy amounts of video games. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Japanese TV shows and movies, but they are
Somewhat.
crazy violent, you know,
Yeah.
absolutely insane violent a lot of the time. And you know, Japanese people love their video games. They love these violent movies, and they're
Yeah.
not violent people. You know, one could argue it's the video game and the movie is an outlet for violence. That's a totally different subject. But there's no clear correlation between the people who consume the most video games, violent video games and movies, and the violence in the country. There just isn't none.
Mhm.
So you have these two conflicting, you know, ideas. You have the feminists and you have the people saying that there's no relation.
Yeah.
Now, just for holding the other opinion, a person might say you're
Dodgist.
approving of rape, you're approving of sexual violence,
Yeah.
you're a rape apologist yourself,
Yeah.
you're a misogynist yourself, right? For saying that. Now, the problem with that is, no, I'm saying that the things you're attacking are things to me that are not the problem of a problem that I'm concerned with. I'm concerned with the problem of misogyny, of rape. I don't like rape. I want to push away things and condemn things that do approve rape. I'm not a rape apologist. I just don't think this is the origin of the problem. And instead of talking about if this is the origin of the problem, which you can talk about that. You can say, are video games the origin of the problem? Instead of doing that, a lot of these women will say, they'll start attacking you personally, right? They'll say,
Of course.
you know what? Let's forget about the games. The problem now here is you, and we need to start talking about you and what a misogynist or rape apologist you are. And then the person has to get defensive, and they start talking about themselves. I'm not a rape apologist. I don't approve of it. And then the whole conversation is about themselves, right?
Yeah, no.
And there is a parallel there with Sam Harris and Atheist, that instead of saying the origin of the problem is religion, and a religion that is particularly more violent, Sam Harris will. I was gonna say.
Cenk Uygur.
Yeah, Cenk Uygur. Cenk Uygur will say, no, the origin, the problem here is that you're a bigot. The problem is you hate Muslims. The problem is you want to nuke the Middle East. The problem is the problem is you. And then Sam Harris has to spend a better part of a year now just defending personal attacks and things he didn't say. And now we're not even talking about whether Islam encourages violence. We're not talking about that anymore. We're just talking about whether you're a bigot or not.
Yeah, it's a distraction from the argument.
Yeah.
Like I had a personal episode of this back in February.
Right.
There was a guy on my Twitter feed. Like, he was actually, I think I probably told you about this a while ago, and like, he was a friend of mine in actual real life.
Yeah.
And I'd actually say again.
You should explain it now so people know the context.
Yeah. Basically, I'd noticed that he was constantly making these pro third wave feminist tweets, and he was retweeting a lot of third wave feminists.
Right.
And like a lot of the stuff they were just coming out with it was just really irritating. So I finally decided, okay, I'm gonna call him on this and ask him what's the story. And in one instance, he actually he said to me, "Why do I have the burden of proof?" And my immediate reaction was, okay, you're making all these claims that there is misogyny, that there's rape culture, and blah blah blah. And I'd like to just I'd like to see some substantive evidence. I'd like to see you can point to sort of all these different things, but I've seen that these different things have been debunked. Like the University of Virginia, just to give an example, like fair enough, like the University of the UVA scandal wasn't thrown out of court just at that point. That came a little later on, but there was other issues that I was actually already aware of, and actually it was actually the one issues that actually sort of stuck out in my mind were the PZ Myers and Melody Hensley accusations towards Michael Shermer that he was some sort of rapist.
I read a little bit about that. I don't totally remember, but I remember it was basically a very vague accusation of rape. Was it?
Was it It was like Melody Hensley said that she knew a woman, like the same as PZ Myers. Now I get like it was like I know PZ Myers was definitely involved in this. I'm not 100% about Melody Hensley, but they were accusing Michael Shermer of some sort of sexual assault or sexual harassment, and there was no sort of like to what I can like from what I can remember, there was no sort of substantive evidence to it, and basically, like that was sort of part of my response to this guy. Like I was saying to him that I'm kind of fed up with these third wave feminists making all these accusations that they can't even substantiate,
Right.
And he was so offended at me that he unfollowed me. Fine, grand.
Right.
But
Right.
like he actually he screenshotted my initial tweet, hoping, just absolutely hoping and dying, to see. He screenshotted it and tweeted it, like he was hoping that people would actually sort of pour all their scorn and hatred on me, but it completely backfired on him. Like,
Yeah, a little bit of social. He was looking for social justice right there, right?
yeah, he was fighting that war pretty hard, man.
Right, yeah. Well,
But
well, I don't think we should talk too much about Gamergate or feminism right now, because that's a different subject, and I don't know if we want to.
It is, yeah.
If we want to piss off the feminists right now in our first talk, but because these are very different subjects, and we're gonna piss off two groups, or maybe three, or maybe five, or maybe 10.
Yeah.
Already, but
fuck them.
To keep it on subject, it is a good example of people when they're challenged. There is a valid argument to when a person just doesn't recognize the truth, and you just can get very pissed at them.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that feeling. I sympathize with some people who, they'll show evidence and the person just won't recognize it. As atheists, this happens to us all the time, obviously. And we'll just, it will just come down to blocking them and saying, go to hell. I'm not going to argue with it. I'm wasting my time on this and everything. But there are people who will jump to that when people just say, can you, provide evidence?
Mm-hmm.
And because of the lack of evidence, they'll act like that, which is different. Now, to distinguish between the two people is very difficult. You'd have to go person to person, right? So it's very hard, but especially the dominant voices in feminism tend to be right now people who are very reactionary and don't really like having their beliefs questioned too much, right?
Yeah, and I'd say, like, and obviously the same goes for Islam. The fact that
right.
You have this holy book. It is the unalterable word of God, as recited by the angel Jabril. And if you criticize it, then you're either some sort of apostate or kafir.
You pronounce it Jabril?
Well, the archangel. Well, as Muslims actually pronounce Gabriel.
Oh, okay. I wasn't aware they pronounced it as Gabriel is Jabril. It's interesting.
Well, it's all the same tradition. Like Moses, right. Musa, David, Dawood.
I'm sure there was no. What was Paul and David, exact pronunciations as it said in English back then. But but I think to move on, like we really shouldn't talk too much about feminists and Gamergate now. But to talk about Cenk Uygur and what he was doing, for example, so after seeing this, I've become very active on Twitter in the last half year, and gained a lot of followers pretty quick. It's not
Sure.
huge; it's 6,000 right now, but you know, a lot of people do come to my Twitter. A lot of atheists do, and I tweeted out a lot of the things Cenk Uygur was saying about these specific topics of atheists being atheist fundamentalists or new atheists, you know, being bigoted against all Muslims, wanting to kill all Muslims, and so I called him out on it, and I threw it out on his Twitter. A lot of people followed that, and he did address. He at one point, what is it, like 2 weeks ago now? He addressed, and he even replied to me. And so when I asked him about this, saying, calling atheists, bigots, or saying we're talking about all Muslims is ridiculous. He brings up Christopher Hitchens, right, and says,
Yeah.
"Oh, but Christopher Hitchens approved of the Iraq War, where millions of people died." I mean, just that comment was so ridiculous. Yeah. I asked him, like, are you? I told him, like, are you really going to discard every opinion Christopher Hitchens had because he supported a war that you don't agree with? And he said something to the effect of, Christopher Hitchens was bloodthirsty for Muslims, and aren't you embarrassed by this? As if Christopher Hitchens, one, is representing all atheists, as if Christopher Hitchens approving of the Iraq War was proof that he hated all Muslims and wanted to kill all Muslims. It's such a ridiculous thing. I mean, first of all, Christopher Hitchens doesn't speak for me or all atheists in general. He's not our prophet or anything of the sort. The second thing, I don't think that's a good example of trying to prove that he was in favor of killing all Muslims. I am familiar with Christopher Hitchens, and from what I understand, whether you agree with his approval of the Iraq War or not, you might disagree with it, but his reasons for siding with the Iraq War is that he believed that Saddam Hussein was the worst thing for the country, much worse than anything else. He also was a very big supporter of Kurdistan. I remember he would always point that he had the flag of Kurdistan on his lapel and things like that. So, he cared about, secular people suffering under Saddam. He cared about people of Kurdistan. And in his belief, he often said he was very anti-totalitarian. And his belief was that the United States attacking Saddam Hussein and ousting him out of power was the best thing. He might have been wrong. A lot of people say he was definitely wrong. Okay, that's fine. But that's not an example of him of saying that he wants to kill all Muslims. It's not. He cares about them and wants their country to improve. His methods and his beliefs might be off, but you cannot say that Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, they're Ayaan Hirsi Ali, they hate all Muslims. They want to kill all Muslims. This is just, go ahead.
Yeah, I know. I'll just stop you there, right there.
Yeah.
I remember hearing Christopher Hitchens saying once that, he didn't care that if every single member of the 82nd Airborne was a Bible-believing snake handler. All he cared about was that he felt some sort of solidarity with them in the fact that they were in some sort of way combating fundamentalist Islam. Now, to give it a bit of context,
yeah.
I'm not entirely sure whether or not that actually happened after he made those comments after the fall of Saddam or before the fall of Saddam. But he was very happy and very eager to sort of point to the fact that Saddam was a very pious Muslim, although there's some things about the displays of Saddam Hussein's faith, the Quran made of blood, that I'd sort of raise an eyebrow about. That just sounds really bizarre. But like, and yes, I will say, like Saddam, he actually, like, his intention was actually to sort of build the world's largest mosque in Baghdad, and
I mean, we could talk about like the
yeah,
secularism or the fundamentalism of Saddam Hussein and how bad he was, but I mean that's a different subject. I could talk about that right now,
yeah,
but I think it's better if we talk about the fact of the argument, the argument
like,
of because the thing is that was only one comment. Cenk Uygur in the same tweets
yeah,
tweeted out that Sam Harris approves of the bombing of Gaza and Sudan.
yeah,
Ayaan Hirsi Ali supports Israel.
mhm.
Of course, we could talk about Gaza, we could talk about Israel, we could talk about Iraq, but
They-
the general argument is not about those wars. It's about those people supporting those wars, and therefore, I'm coming to the conclusion
that they were,
that they were
that they were completely anti-Muslim.
Yeah,
Yeah,
completely anti-Muslim. They want to kill all Muslims. This is very unsincere speaking. I mean, to disqualify. Yeah. I mean, I know for a fact because I do watch the Young Turks. I know that during the bombing of Gaddafi in Libya, the Gaddafi forces in Libya, I know Cenk Uygur was in favor of that, and not all people are, right? And I could say, oh, Cenk Uygur, you supported the bombing of Libya.
Yeah.
You want to kill all Muslims. You want all Muslims dead. He would say, of course. What are you talking about? I supported the bombing of Libya because I want the best for the Libyan people, right? Yep. And this is my point of view and everything. Okay, well, that's the same thing with Sam Harris or Ayaan Hirsi Ali or Christopher Hitchens. You might disagree with the wars they support, but it's not an example that they hate all Muslims and they want to kill all Muslims. It's just that's not true. That might be true for some people, but that's not proof to that. It's not. So
no, absolutely. Like I suppose if you actually sort of I listened to the audiobook of God Is Not Great, on multiple occasions. Actually, in fact, I think it was specifically in the chapter, the Quran is borrowed from Christian and Jewish myths. He actually he discusses like Christopher Hitchens. He discusses the visit that he got from the Ayatollah's grandson, and like in his own house, and the passages that that his grandson had actually sort of written in the back of his Quran, which contradict his grandfather's claim to supreme clerisy in this world, and the fact he's even willing to have these conversations with Muslims, he's also sort of described himself going to Friday prayers in Beirut and Tehran, other places in Bosnia.
One of the things that I tweeted to Cenk Uygur, which he didn't reply to after he said that about Christopher Hitchens, about him. Christopher Hitchens he literally said that Christopher Hitchens was bloodthirsty for Muslims.
Yeah.
He literally said that, bloodthirsty, because I tweeted that back to him quite a few times, that you were saying he's bloodthirsty for Muslims. I tweeted him a link and a screen capture of the article he wrote after Christopher Hitchens had undergone waterboarding.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Absolutely.
He underwent waterboarding twice, and he did that just to prove that this is torture. That it's not enhanced interrogation. You are being tortured.
Yeah.
And obviously, the people being waterboarded when he wrote that article, and he did that, and he wanted to prove that he was addressing the waterboarding of Muslims and Muslim terrorists, specifically many who are also not terrorists, and people who were perhaps waterboarded who weren't. But in general, the waterboarding issue was specific to Muslims. At the time he wrote.
Sure.
And that defense that he wrote was a defense to Muslims being tortured in the United States,
Sure.
and you say that in general, you're comparing yourself, to a guy who's been to Iraq, who's been to Iran, who underwent waterboarding, and Cenk Uygur has an online show. It's like I'm not saying I compare myself to him either. I'm no better or worse than Cenk Uygur, but I'm not going to compare myself to Christopher Hitchens, and I'm not going to say I have experiences he had, but he obviously did a lot of things that are definitely proof that he did care a lot about Muslims, the well-being of Muslims and how they suffer under Islam itself. He saw Islam as a problem. Some people see politics and U.S. foreign policy as the problem. That's fine. You can say it's different problems. He had his opinion, but his objective wasn't to kill all Muslims. This is the problem that at least I feel that the Young Turks have now, that a lot of people feel that they have now, that it's gone from criticizing religion to you must criticize religion all equally, and you must recognize that it is a minuscule part of the problem, and or you must say, like he in one of his videos say, that the religion isn't the problem at all, it's fundamentalism. That logic right there is just beyond me. To say religion isn't the problem, it's fundamentalism, that makes no sense.
Yeah, no, I agree there.
The fundamentalism of what? Of what are you talking about? The fundamentalism of religion. That's and to the degree I don't agree with that either. Even moderate religion to me is not a good thing. Moderate lies are not better than fundamental lies. To moderately teach a book that says that has a lot of aggression towards infidels, to teach that moderately is not better. It's not good. To say, oh, well, to be too fundamentalist towards a book that says be aggressive towards infidels, yes, that might be worse, but it's not like it's passive. To say this like, oh, that's the only problem. It's not a problem at all to teach this book to little kids. No, to teach that book to anyone on any level as being true is going to be a problem.
Yeah.
And it's going to affect them in some way. It might not make them a terrorist. It'll affect them in some way. It may just make them rude towards infidels. Forget terrorism. Maybe a Muslim child will grow up to be rude to infidels. That's also not good. And if you want to call that moderate, we have very different ideas of what moderate is.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, have you ever heard of a guy called Hamza Andreas Sortis?
No.
He's, from what I understand, he's actually he's a Greek British convert to Islam, and like he's like back, I think it was probably 2011 or 2012. The World Atheists, they actually decided to have their conference in Dublin in Ireland. Actually, I think it could have been even 2010. Hamza Andreas Sortis, he went to Dublin to the World Atheist Convention, specifically to talk to people like P.Z. Myers and to Richard Dawkins, and this is actually one point I can definitely sort of stand shoulder to shoulder with P.Z. Myers on. When presented with the ridiculous ideas that Islam presents about embryology,
Right, yeah. I've seen some.
I don't know if anyone here is familiar with them, but there is a specific verse in the Quran that compares an embryo to something which is chewed, and and then it also sort of makes this mad claim that it is like a leech, and you know,
And Muslims see this as proof that how magnificent and you know, how knowledgeable the Quran is, because it really is like that.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, absolutely.
whatever.
But the,
I honestly don't care.
yeah, I know, but again, like the whole, like,
Miraculous and interesting. But, go ahead.
yeah, no, like
Unprecedented.
what I'm getting at is, you know, like PC Myers just immediately dismissed it as garbage, and then I think later on, sort of, he was actually looking for like a private audience with, well, not so much a private, but like he wanted to sort of talk to Richard Dawkins mano a mano, and some random guy just comes up to him and says, "Sorry, can you explain why, if the human being is so perfect, that we need to we need to we need to mutilate their genitals?" And his immediate reply was, "Are you Mr. Richard Dawkins?" "No." "Well, I don't want to talk to you." And then he just walks off like a prick, like a fucking prick. And you know, I think that's like that is the kind of the high and lofty like sort of notion that these people sort of have about themselves. And you know, I think like it was sometime in 2011 that
When you say these people, of course, you don't mean all Muslims.
I'm specifically talking about Hamza Andreas Sortis.
Yeah, and he's the kind of people he is, and
yeah. Now, like, mind you, I know for a fact that Hamza Andreas Sortis at least had one or two associates in the Dublin Mosque, because they came to visit my college. I think it was back in March of 2012. Like they came to my college, like they came to my college to proselytize, but they didn't come to proselytize. If you get what I mean.
no.
Well, no, they wanted to actually sort of present this really friendly face. Like, I think the Islamic Society of the college I went to, they wanted to sort of present this really sort of friendly face of Islam. So in the main foyer of
they have
where
the right to do that, and
say again.
they have the right to do that. And
Oh, absolutely, and I wouldn't deny them that.
Yeah.
There's no problem. There's no problem there. I actually went up, and actually this is how I found out that these were associates of Sortis. I actually engaged them in conversation. I talked to them about various issues. In fact, I actually tripped one up in sort of why he believe. Like, I actually tripped him up in why he believes in Allah.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to him, he said, you know, Allah is like, you know, your mother holding your hair when you're drunk and you're getting sick all over the place. And then I just said, well, like, does not mean you
holding my hair when I'm drunk. So
yeah, I know. And I just said, I just said, like, you know, well, doesn't that just mean you have a good mother and you don't need a sky daddy? And he was like, I have to pray on that. But you know,
I mean, a friend would work just as well.
Yeah, there you go. But you know, like I suppose the tangent I was going on is, you know, I don't think there's any defense for intellectual dishonesty, and you know,
there is a defense for intellectual dishonesty when your objective is not intellectualism. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah.
a lot of people ask, why do, for example, Cenk Uygur or Reza Aslan or any of these people do what they do? People say, I've seen people say about C.J. Werleman that it's about money. People might say they're deluded or things like that. But the thing is, the thing is,
oh no, it's just I'm agreeing that you know, C.J. Werleman's dishonesty, like, is actually, it's definitely about money, especially.
Right.
Especially when he allegedly plagiarized other people's articles.
Right. No, I mean, I'm not saying it isn't. What I'm saying is,
yep.
What I'm saying is, when asking yourself why these people do what they do,
Yeah.
it's not always a good thing to assume all these people have one objective. C.J. Werleman, I mean, his opinions are so all over the place that he was once an atheist that said very bigoted things about Muslims, that the godless spell checker has now outed him as both a bigoted against atheists, and now because of some old tweets he had that were extremely bigoted against Muslims, that now he's just, nobody knows where he stands. It probably is about money to him, because he's written a bunch of books and nobody's ever heard of this guy. I doubt he makes any money from his books at all. So now he has to feed to some audience, and now his audiences are Muslims instead of atheists, because atheists were buying his books. But the thing is, when asking yourself why these people would do what they do, why are they intellectually dishonest? I mean, the one reason they're purposely doing it to be intellectually dishonest for money. Another reason is that their objective is not to come to a truth. If their objective is to defend Islam against critics, then they're being intellectually honest to themselves. Because the thing is, when you go into that debate, a lot of times as atheists or something like that, we expect that our mutual objective is to come to a truth. And not everybody has that same objective, right? Yeah. When the other person, their objective is to defend their position or defend a religion, then anything they do to defend it is valid, right? Well, it's very different when we come into the conversation and we're willing to have our opinions changed based on evidence that's given, right? And a lot of people say, "Oh, well, atheists don't change their position on anything, despite evidence being brought to them." What evidence? You've never brought any evidence. That's why we've never changed our opinion. So the thing is, you have to. It's not always a good thing to assume people are lying. I hear this a lot when people say, for example, it's a very common that you'll hear people say that religious leaders, like religious politicians, religious leaders in the Middle East or in the United States or in Europe, they're not really religious. You'll hear people say, "Oh, these people are not really religious. They use religion to control the masses." How many times have you heard this? That the religious leaders use religion to control the masses, but they don't actually believe the religion themselves. At some point I realized that is very naive way of thinking. That is very stupid, because that is to assume that the most religious people, the most fanatically devout people, never reach positions of power, and that's just not true. The people who are very fanatical and very deeply, profoundly, strongly religious are people who are very likely to reach positions of power. They are often admired by religious followers as, "Oh, here's a person who really they have the strength of their convictions," Sure. And a lot of people admire that. A lot of people admire very strongly religious people. And being very religious, very strong. I don't know if you've ever met a person who is very deeply, very strongly religious. Yeah, they're very motivated people. They're people who care a lot about politics, policy. They're very organized. They have their churches or mosques or groups, and they organize, functions and lectures. So to think that these people never reach a position of power is just insane. Of course, a lot of the people who reach positions of power are deeply religious, and their objective is not to manipulate people and make money. Their objective is their religion, because they're very religious. So we have to be careful when we talk about the Hamza or CJ or Reza or even Cenk Uygur, and what his objectives are, And it's not like I'm saying Cenk Uygur is some kind of a sleeper agent or something like that. It's not that. Is that not necessarily when they give an opinion, they're trying to reach the truth. Sometimes Cenk Uygur might be just trying to protect Muslim people he knows, and that's more important than criticizing religion.
Well, yeah. Here, I'll interject with this point here. Last year, there's this public figure in Ireland. His name is Rory O'Neill. He's a drag queen, and he owns a very successful gay bar in Dublin city centre. He does comedy performances in drag, and like I haven't been to one, but I'd love to go because they like I've seen videos and they look hilarious. But he was invited onto a weekend chat show, and like
What?
he was invited onto like a weekend chat show on the national broadcaster.
You get it with your accent there.
Say again?
I didn't understand chat show with your accent.
Oh, fair enough. And like I feel really sorry for him because he was essentially goaded into giving an answer for a question that was posed to him. Like he was asked by the presenter like about homophobia in the press in Ireland, and there was a number of people that he mentioned, and they are like all I'm going to say is that they are aligned to a certain organization in the country, and that it's actually you could almost say it's a Catholic fundamentalist organization. But he mentioned names, and these people actually they sue they pretty much, from what I understand, they were just short of suing the national broadcaster for defamation, and they got payouts of, I think it was about €63,000 each, basically because some guy said, "I think these people are homophobic because they write these things in national newspapers," and you know what, like that guy Rory O'Neill, I think he's a hero. To actually like fucking stand up to these people. But the thing about it was, what he said was so vanilla and so bland and so boring. But what he said didn't even make the news. It was actually these people who actually it was these people's demand for a payment because they felt they were defamed.
Right. Well, but that's the thing. But then it became a legal issue, right? They wanted to sue him essentially, right?
Well, not him, but the national broadcaster. And just at this point, I just want to mention that is my understanding of the situation, and any factual errors that I've mentioned, we're not uttered with any sort of malicious intent.
Right. I mean, well, we should be clear that any errors we make in the stories we tell.
Yeah.
I'm open to any story I've told, any report or anything like that, any quote I gave. If it's corrected, it's it's totally fine. But I think it's more about we're just using those as examples. Even if they're errors, we're trying to get out our opinions on certain subjects and how they're addressed. And even if the story's wrong, there's another story that's similar that might represent it better, right?
Yeah, sure.
So for example, that story you just told, assuming it's told like the way it happened, maybe somebody said, "Oh, you're totally wrong," and "Oh, how could you call this guy?" Fine, it's totally wrong. But let's give a ton of other examples. Let's talk about like the Westboro Baptist Church.
Yeah, sure.
There's no mystery there. They're terrible, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, to me, it doesn't matter whether a person what they say is correct or not, right?
Yeah.
The point is, like, I think it's always a triumph when somebody gets their freedom of speech protected, right?
Yeah.
And if the Westboro Baptist Church, there's that's horribly disgusting wall. It's a they get their right to say their hideous, disgusting things, and I sympathize with the people who have to hear them, especially if it's at the funeral of the person you care about. I sympathize with that, and I'll assist you in attacking them, on a debate level, on a conversational level, on let's talk shit about them level.
Yeah.
But I don't agree with saying they can't say what they have to say. And Westboro Baptist is like the most ultra Christian you can give an example, but this applies to Islam as well. I mean, I'm very, very critical and against the ideas of Islam as anyone else, and a person can call me Islamophobic and bigoted as much as they want, but they're not going to tell me that I'm against freedom of speech, because I even in the case of Islam, total freedom of speech. To me, like for example, the Ground Zero Mosque that was not even next to, it was like a few blocks away from Ground Zero in New York.
That whole issue is ridiculous.
I mean, the whole issue was ridiculous, but even, I mean, people said it was a community center, not a mosque. Let's say it's a mosque. Let's say it's a mosque on Ground Zero, not just blocks away. Let's say it's on Ground Zero. Let's say it is totally a mosque. If they have the right to the property and it's their property and they want to build a mosque there, to me, if people are, to me, protection of First Amendment rights is that they have the right to do that. They have every right to build a mosque. If people want to build a mosque and go worship there, that has to. I'm not. There's a lot of people in Europe. I've seen who is it? Gret Wilders, right? Who from Denmark? Yeah,
from the Netherlands.
From the Netherlands? Is he from the Netherlands? From the Netherlands. And I've heard him say, for example, he wants to ban the Quran, right? And I mean, we probably share a lot of the same criticisms of Islam, but I don't agree with him in banning the Quran at all. I'm totally against that. So, I mean, that could vary from person to person as far as like what you believe about freedom of speech. If you think that would help the problem or not. To me personally, I don't even care if it helps the problem. I'm just not in favor of freedom of speech at all.
Sure, and
if it incites violence, to me, I mean, I'm to the point. I'm an absolutist. To me, it doesn't even matter if you're inciting violence. To me, only you can legislate on actions. If you incited violence, then okay, you have to arrest the people who committed the violence. You can't preemptively decide to arrest a person or sue a person because of what they said. At least that's me, and a lot of people might disagree on that.
Yeah, and like I'll go back to I'll go to an example of what recently happened here in Ireland. Like I was telling you about the referendum on same-sex marriage that happened back in May, and there was actually groups of anarchists pretty much roving the country. They were either defacing or tearing down and stealing posters from organizations that were advocating against the constitutional amendment. And like a journalist, actually, like a proper journalist from, well, I shouldn't say that, that's not nice, but a journalist from,
hard to say who's a proper journalist, right?
So
if you have an iPhone or any kind of smartphone and you tape something and put it on the internet and talk about it, you're a journalist.
But I know he was a journalist with.
He's a mainstream journalist.
Yeah, he was, like, his name is Connor Pope. He I think he's a contributor to the Irish Times, which is like that and the Irish Independent. They're both the journal of record for this country, and like basically like he took a video of these two anarchists in North Dublin City taking down no posters, and he essentially said to them, like, you do know what you're doing is anti-democratic. No, like, the posters that were actually put up by the no people, like by the people who were advocating a no vote, like they were in, like, a lot of them were insanely ridiculous and like grossly offensive to a lot of people. But they still have the right to actually sort of put those posters up and advocate against the constitutional amendment. Like
I'm a person who a lot of people. The thing is, a lot of people are, because they confuse they don't like a person who's homophobic and they don't like the message with the person saying it.
Yeah.
Right. And well, this is not really a conflict that's too wide now. I mean, a lot.
Yeah. I
mean, I have run into people who are kind of, they see more of a gray area here.
Yeah.
But I mean, the whole free speech issue is, I mean, that's possibly could be a whole different video, because we could just talk about that for like
Yeah, no, yeah, no, and sure, we will get to that at some point. But like, I suppose, like, you know, in relation to the whole sort of like Cenk Uygur and his mad ideas of fundamentalist atheism, you know,
yeah,
hear this man like say whatever the hell you like, you know.
right.
I agree with like probably about 70 to 75% of what Cenk Uygur actually says.
In general,
Anyway, in general, yeah.
I mean,
But
I
like,
do. I admire him a lot. I mean,
yeah,
because I've been very critical of Cenk Uygur, but I'll even say I've always admired him for being a person who was very liberal, but
yeah,
took
sure,
a lot of care into also criticizing, for example, Obama, and
yeah,
with very specific detail. And that's not something you could really get from a liberal outlet too much.
sure.
You know, all the
And
criticisms usually came from like Fox News, and then everything else from MSNBC or CNN or anything, or The Daily Show, was defending Obama against conservative critics.
yeah,
But
and
there was no criticism of liberals as to what Obama was doing, and Cenk Uygur did that a lot, and I think he did that very well. You
and
know,
sure, like
yeah.
like a lot of the criticisms of Obama were absolute horseshit. Like, especially coming
From Fox News, but
from Fox News, they were complete non-issues. Like the like, you know, even take Hillary Clinton, like the whole sort of email issue, they were.
was a non-issue, right?
But like, you know, it
Use
was
a
like,
non-official email.
yeah, yeah, and you know, like I'll sort of say that, you know, if you're gonna criticize somebody, don't criticize them from the right, because like, you know, if you're criticizing them from the right, then you know, you have a ridiculous. Say again?
If you criticize them from the right, you'll never criticize them. They'll always be the kind of this holy figure.
Yeah, and well, you know, if you criticize them from the right, you know, you probably have some bullshit story. But if you criticize them from the left, you know,
Yeah.
sort of, let's see if I can pluck an example out of my ass. Food stamps. Though, like the fact that the United States Congress actually sort of defunded the SNAP program, and Obama didn't do anything about it, or Hillary Clinton and her donors. Yeah, absolutely. I'll agree with Cenk Uygur on that. And you know,
Yeah.
that is, those are the proper criticisms. That, like, those are the substantive criticisms that you actually sort of, people need to talk about, and they need to actually sort of have the conversation about. But like when you're actually sort of when you're sort of making a comparison, I don't know, of Sam Harris to
Sarah Palin.
Sarah Palin, yeah,
C.J. Orleman said
or
that.
yeah, like you know, I think you kind of have to sort of say, yeah, I'm not with you. You know, like
that C.J. Orleman would compare Sam Harris to Sarah Palin. It was obvious he would say that, but it was very sad that on a panel with I think at least 3 other people, they just kind of sat there and say, "Oh, that's interesting. You're comparing Sam Harris to Sarah Palin."
Yeah.
What the, you know? That's not a I mean, and also the thing with that of what ideas to attack.
Yeah.
Sam Harris may think that the Quran is more violent than the Old Testament, and Cenk Uygur maybe can disagree with that. But Cenk Uygur is insisting that no criticism be in the realm of one is more violent than another. You know, oh, they're all equally wrong, so they can all have equally wrong conclusions. And one thing is to make 2 inaccurate statements, and the other thing is when those inaccurate statements, what results they have, right? So he's saying, Cenk Uygur would say, I could find 10 videos of him saying they're all equally wrong. They're all equally wrong, and say so since they're all equally wrong, don't criticize one more than the other, or don't say one is worse than the other. Well, okay. Well, but let's take 2 examples. Let's say if you teach a child about Santa Claus, that's as equally wrong as teaching him about Allah or the Prophet Muhammad. They're equally wrong.
Yeah.
Are they going to have the same results? No,
Probably not.
you know, they're just not. Saying they're equally wrong and saying since they're equally wrong, they're going to have the same results is a ridiculous thing.
Yeah.
False statements do not have equal results.
Yeah, you
Absolutely
can't
not, man.
you cannot conflate you can't conflate like one idea that actually sort of has actually. Did you ever see that the documentary that Bill Maher made, Religious?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, you know, when he was talking to that guy, Doctor Jeremiah something or other. He used to be part of a very famous pop group in the '70s, and now he's a pastor in some sort of African American church. He was sort of talking about like some young man that he was actually talking to about a girl, and he says like that kind of strength and energy or something. Why don't you turn that to God and see what happens? Like he was going to kill himself over a girl. And, there was just a sort of a slight cutaway of a man running towards a vehicle and exploding. Yeah, like I suppose the reference I'm actually sort of I'm making is that like if you're actually sort of you can read the I suppose like what I'm trying to say is that Bill Maher was very succinctly able to actually sort of show how human emotion towards one idea can result in something that was powerfully violent.
Yeah.
Whereas in another situation, it just, it probably wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, I mean, another thing is like when you bring up Religulous is the fact that Sam Harris, Bill Maher, Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, they've all have gone to great lengths to also criticize Christianity, right? Yeah. Now, I wouldn't argue at all that the main focus of all of these people, Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, before he died, all centered they gravitated more towards Islam, right? Bill Maher, same thing now. Also, it talks a lot more about Islam than Christianity. But so, for example, Cenk Uygur or C.J. Werleman or whatever, they say, "Oh, you criticize Christianity, but you're saying that Muslims are worse," right? And when you put it like that, it sounds like they're like as if they're saying a Christian person is better than a Muslim person, right? Now, no, but it is true that is basically what they're saying. Muslims are worse. Worse in what sense, right? Worse in the sense that overall, it's a much more serious issue, the issue of Islam than Christianity, dude. It just is. I mean, now Cenk likes pushing a pseudo study that says that right-wing conservative violence in the United States has killed more people in the last 15 years than Muslims. And he says, "Oh, well, see, the more conservatives have killed people than Muslims." That study conveniently leaves out 9/11, which goes then from less than 100 people to 2,000 people. So this study is very conveniently leaving out a couple thousand people from 9/11 from the 9/11 attacks.
Sure.
Even if that was the case, and it isn't, because that study is nonsense if it's leaving out 9/11. Why do you leave out 9/11? What's the point of that? 9/11 did happen, included, Okay, but even if that wasn't the case, even if if there was more conservative right-wing violence than Muslim violence in the United States, even if that's true, in the rest of the world, in the whole world, it is a very serious issue. It is the main issue, is the violence that is associated to the religion of Islam. Much, much more than any violence that's associated to the religion of Christianity or Judaism, etc. So obviously, you have to put a lot of focus on it. It's a global issue.
But sure,
he's accusing the focus of the attention to bigotry. Oh, you're saying that because you're saying there's more Muslim violence, so Muslims are worse, so you're a bigot.
Sure.
It's like, oh, well, forgive me for addressing the fact that there's more that this is a huge problem in the world.
Mm-hmm. Well, like I'm just gonna sort of I'm gonna come in on that point. Like 4 years ago this week, Anders Behring Breivik, he
I lost your audio. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Hello? Lalo? Hello? Hello? Just say when you can hear me. Hello? Hello? Can you hear me now? Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes or no?
Yes.
You can hear me. I can't hear you.
You can't hear me.
I still can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, hold on.
It's probably still recording on my end.
Sorry, no. Something was wrong with my speakers.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, 4 years ago this week, in Norway, there was the infamous attack of Anders Behring Breivik.
Yeah.
And like he had his manifesto. I think it was called 2068, in which like he went on about how Norway was going to become a Muslim state if we didn't do something about it, and blah 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 blah. And like I have a friend. He's essentially an evangelical Christian. He's a Baptist, and like I said to him, well, like I was mentioning to him, oh yeah, like did you hear about that fundamentalist Christian Anders Behring Breivik murdering those people on Utøya? And he was essentially saying, oh, he's not a Christian. Like he was invoking the no true Scotsman argument.
Right. Yeah. I read some of what he wrote and some of his inspiration. Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But I don't remember. Like as far as I can remember, I don't remember any pastor or priest of the Christian faith actually coming out to apologize for everyone did condemn the attack. Everyone did.
Right. Well,
there's no dispute there.
Yeah. Well, the thing with Breivik was a very odd subject. From what I read in his declarations and his writings that I read, some of it. So Breivik, some people say he was an atheist. I didn't see anything that indicated he was an atheist by any means. He considered himself like a Christian crusader, and he had like the Crusades
cross
on his manifesto. I mean, that's very atheist to have a cross of a Crusades on your manifesto. The thing is, at one point he said, I know God will be with me when I go out and kill people and blah blah blah. So he was definitely a believer in God. I would say he was also a Christian. The thing is, people kind of disassociated themselves with him because in a lot of his writings he criticized the Catholic Church.
Sure.
And what he did was he said the Catholic Church, but this actually the criticism he gave of the Catholic Church reinforced his Christianity, because his criticism of the Catholic Church was that they weren't fundamentalist enough.
Yeah.
That was his criticism.
Yeah.
He said you guys have become too soft. Not that he didn't believe in them or that your doctrines are all bunk. He said you guys should be tougher. Right?
Sure.
So that was his criticism, and so that allowed like institutions to disconnect themselves from him, but it didn't make him an atheist by any means, you know.
Not at all. But like,
and you know, bonkers. And I wouldn't. I mean, I don't really know if. I mean, a lot of people say this is an excuse, but I mean, who knows to what point he.
Yeah, sure.
He was really just insane. I don't know. It's that a lot of people say, "Oh, you're excusing blah blah blah." Whatever. I don't know.
Sure. No, I just like, but the point I was actually trying to get to is that you know, like Cenk Uygur, he said this numerous times on the Young Turks, like, you know, there's some sort of attack that actually sort of involves a Muslim. You know, like a lot of right wingers in the States, they will say not a single Muslim has apologized for this, believing that, you know,
but you know, that really isn't said as much as say it's said.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know, like, but you know,
I don't. Yeah. Go ahead,
just like I suppose the point I'm trying to make is that, you know, going from what I've actually the stuff I've seen by Cenk Uygur, you know, he's actually sort of pointed to specific instances where, I don't know, probably someone like Louis Gohmert or Michelle Bachmann or some ridiculous right wingers actually sort of they've pretty much demanded a some form of an apology from the or condemnation from the Muslim community. And you know, Cenk Uygur, he'll be very quick to sort of point out the Center for Islamic American Relations has wholeheartedly and unreservedly condemned these attacks. Like,
well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, so first of all, to a degree, first of all, obviously Muslims don't have to apologize for the actions of others. That I agree with completely. I'm not going to apologize for anybody's other actions except my own, ever. You know, obviously. So, for on one side of the argument, yes, I mean, obviously there are organizations that do condemn actions by Muslims. The thing is that when people make that criticism, the people like Cenk Uygur or Rula Jibril, Reza Aslan, even people in the left wing will say, well, I can point to many Muslim organizations that have condemned these actions. And those organizations are very convenient, you know, and it's very good that they condemn those actions. They should, you know, that's great. They don't have to. It's not their responsibility to do so. It's very good that they do. And great.
Well, I think we should all show solidarity in equally condemning them as
of course. Also, but the thing, and also I'm not a big fan of this obligation to condemn. Do you know what I mean? This kind of compulsory condemnation. Like, why didn't you condemn this? I've been told this on Twitter. Oh, you condemn this and not that. Like, I don't have time to condemn like every shooting in the United States. I don't live in the United States. I live in Chile. You know, people say I didn't condemn this shooting in the United States. When did this happen? This isn't on the news of my country. You know, I'm on Twitter, but I just can't do everything. I also have a life. You know, I work. You know, I have shit to do. I barely have enough time to tweet a little bit. But so I'm not a big fan of compulsory condemnation either, and I don't think Muslims have to do that. But the thing is that there is a valid argument against the fact that, for example, and there's many examples you can give of this. The Salman Rushdie's book, the Satanic Verses. That YouTube clip of this really silly short film about the Prophet Muhammad that caused a lot of protests throughout the Middle East, and it was during the time of the Benghazi attack on the U.S. embassy. There was huge amounts of protests. People died. You know, it was in multiple countries. The Danish cartoons, you know, Danish embassies were burned. You see these huge mass amount of people on the streets and things like that. And the truth is, and I don't even know if those organizations condemned those things as well, it's not an issue to me. What the thing is that we see a really huge reaction in multiple countries to certain things that offend them, and then you don't see these same reactions in other instances, right?
You sure, like,
and it's not. It's actually, and I think it's the arrow saying, why don't you condemn these actions? I don't think it's actually about condemnation. To me, it's about offense. What is offending you? Because when it comes to Muhammad cartoons, I don't think it's unfair to say that a huge amounts of Muslims are more offended by Muhammad cartoons than a lot of than ISIS, or a lot of very strong, horrific acts by Muslim terrorists. And you simply don't see the same reaction. And I understand you can point to CARE, you can point to Muslim organizations and some imams saying we condemn this. If you speak to a lot of moderate Muslims, they'll say they're totally against that. They don't have to apologize for that. It's fine.
Sure,
but even the moderate Muslims have to notice that in the Middle East, you're seeing a lot of protests on very specific subjects that when it's like Muhammad cartoons or books, and the truth is you don't see the same equivalent in the West. You don't see people burning embassies because of cartoons. You just don't, and so when we talk about the reaction, it's not about so much the reaction as what it reflects. It reflect when you see people losing their minds over Muhammad cartoons or a YouTube clip, and not over the death of people. It's a reflection of how they view the world, and that view is very centered around religion.
Sure.
So
actually, I'll even throw in another thing, just sort of slightly digressing. There is a picture going around Twitter, sort of it's a comparison of the color coded alerts like the U.S. has, like for terrorism, but it's for feminism, and feminists will go absolutely apeshit over an acted out rape scene on Game of Thrones, but they'll see millions of women.
So ridiculous.
Yeah, they'll see millions of women being literally treated like chattel in the Middle East, and they just won't give a shit about it.
Yeah, I mean, when that happened, oh God, what was the name of the character who was raped?
Sansa Stark, I think.
Sansa Stark. When Sansa Stark was raped, of course, yeah. I mean, I saw a bunch of. I think it was Jessica Valenti.
Huh? Go on. Yeah, go on.
Jessica Valenti.
Yeah.
Amanda Marcotte are well-known atheists. Well, I remember they said that they would stop watching the show after that. And I mean, at one point, I even found there was a tweet by a female congresswoman in the United States.
Yeah.
Who said she was also going to stop watching the show, and this was an outrage, and and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, for a congresswoman to tweet her outrage over Game of Thrones is so ridiculous. It's just like, I mean, a congresswoman, there's rape, literally, there's mass rape going on in every country, maybe every day.
Yeah,
and you
absolutely.
decided to point out a tweet about a fictional character who was fictionally raped on a fictional show.
Yeah.
It's what's important to point out is that nobody was raped. When they talk about that rape, there was no rape. And even if you made the argument that this is but you're showing rape and that promotes rape. I mean, I would have a big issue with that too. I mean, what you're suggesting is when they say I'm not going to watch this show because it has rape, I would argue that you're also saying, well, then TV shows or movies shouldn't even portray a reality that is rape. Then what you're saying is you want to hide rape from the world as a non-reality. I mean, I would even argue they're promoting rape because there was a point in the United States on TV and movies where rape was not portrayed ever.
Yeah.
And actually,
well, go on.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Well, so there was a time when rape wasn't portrayed ever, and it took time. And there was a lot of feminists who say rape should be portrayed. You know, that this is a reality and people need to see the horrific act and what happens. You know, and there was a time for feminists in the 80s or the 90s, and I really want to mention the movie with Jodie Foster about rape when she was very young. God, what is the name of the movie?
Taxi Driver.
No. God.
No, sorry. She was a different character in that.
Yeah, well, she was playing a young prostitute. But I mean, this is a very significant movie. That's possibly like in the late 80s, and that movie showed. It was about Jodie Foster getting raped, and it was about the recognition of what happened.
Yeah.
Right. And that whole movie is about. Here it is. It's called The Accused, from 1988. And I would say, you know, that movie portraying rape is not promoting rape, and it shouldn't be hidden. It's a very important movie. I saw it when I was, I was probably not that old when I saw it, and it's a very hard hitting movie, and it makes you very disgusted. It makes you think, oh wow, it really destroys life. And in the movie, it's discussed how, she was dancing in a bar in a short skirt, and the guys felt justified, and blah blah blah. So it touches on all those subjects in 1980, very taboo, extremely taboo at that time. And now we're at the point where we come back to the point where we want to hide rape again. You want to go. They're literally saying they want to go back to the 1950s or 1940s or whatever, where rape was kind of this thing. It's it's not talked about. It's hidden. It doesn't happen. That's.
Well, yeah, I suppose that could be like a topic for another night. Where they just
shouldn't go off on that too much.
Where I will actually sort of say, there is a desire for different and specialized interests to actually sort of censor the media that we actually consume, because it actually causes them offense, and it goes back to sort of what you're sort of saying on free speech, about free speech, and I wholeheartedly agree. Actually, even sort of, I actually don't even think that a while ago, I was talking to you about this issue, and I was actually sort of at a very odd juncture because I actually did think that there was actually some types of speech that actually sort of needed a bit of hindrance, but I don't even think that threats should actually be sort of hindered from entering the public domain, because
I actually don't think that threats should be legislated against either. I think you could
fair enough.
You can make a policy on Twitter where you throw people out for it, but I don't think it's necessarily, because the thing is to consider. The thing is that too many things could be considered a threat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like once you say this is a threat, that's a whole. I mean, I could go into my opinion on free speech, but let's keep it about fundamentalism and Islamophobia as we were.
I see we got our first viewer.
Oh, do we?
We have a viewer.
Wow. We didn't even announce this. Wow.
I know, but
hello, viewer.
How you doing, man? Give this a thumbs up, please.
We barely know how this works. I have no idea how you're even checking there's a viewer to even talk to that person. I've never done this before. But I mean, let's go back to the subject of Cenk Uygur and Islamophobia and the bigotry. And there's something I'd like to. I'll talk about, and then you can tell me what you think. Is
just before we continue.
Go ahead.
Just I think we should just wrap up in about 20 minutes. This is we're into our third hour now. We've done about. Yeah, I think we started about 8:15 thereabouts, and that's 8 p.m. my time.
Should we keep talking, or should we wrap it up?
Well, we can. Well, we have one viewer, so I think we'll give him about 20 minutes. 20 minutes
We
or
should be
so.
responsible to our viewer.
Absolutely. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, like sort of going back to what Cenk Uygur actually he has been sort of saying like you know in one instance that he'll talk about like Charlie Hebdo
Yeah.
and actually I'd been reading the London Independent for quite a while. I stopped reading the London Independent because they no longer sell it in print in Ireland.
Mhm.
But like when I was in college, like I was very big into actually sort of reading the London Independent, and uh, you know, the very first place that I actually heard about Charlie Hebdo was the London Independent,
Mhm.
and you know, like there were. I think it was back in 2010 or 2011. Like they were talking about the firebomb attack on their Paris offices, and I'm not sure if it was Le Monde or Le Figaro they moved into, but it was actually the right wing, di- ideologically diametrically opposed newspaper that actually sort of invited them to actually sort of move into their offices while they got a new office after it.
Mhm.
And you know, sort of there was a lot of outcry and there was a lot of support for Charlie Hebdo when they were making these cartoons about Islam. Actually, like the edition of Charlie Hebdo that actually sparked the firebomb attack a couple of years ago was
Right.
called Sharia Hebdo, and it was guest
Sorry,
edited.
yeah.
It was guest edited by the Prophet Muhammad. They had some
Yeah.
really, really racy cartoons of
Yeah.
Muhammad in there. But you know, it's what prompted Al Qaeda in Yemen to actually specifically target these guys earlier on this year because
Mhm.
they'd been known to sort of make cartoons about the Prophet Muhammad. Uh, and Cenk Uygur, he said he was 100% with them. However, he he actually said he didn't repolish the cartoons, and that's fine. That's your choice whether or not you want to repost the cartoons. Like if I
Right.
have I like I have Twitter. Did I repost the cartoons? No. Should I have? Probably yeah, because it would have showed my solidarity with that particular magazine. Like, but like Charlie Hebdo, like people like Christopher Hitchens, they've had pretty
Well,
contrarian views. Like
right.
they don't agree with gay marriage, from
Well,
what I understand.
there's a difference. I I can't speak for Richard Dawkins, for
Yeah,
example, but
yeah,
I think if there was, but I think if there was, I think if there was a cartoon
yeah,
that was drawn
yeah,
about Richard Dawkins showing him negatively,
yeah,
and somebody killed him for it,
yeah.
like somebody killed the
The
not
cartoonist,
Richard Dawkins, the cartoonist.
sure.
Let's say somebody, let's say a Muslim drew a cartoon of Richard Dawkins in a really pejorative way, horrible way,
Yeah,
and an atheist killed him.
yeah.
Unlikely to happen.
Very
Let's say it
unlikely.
did. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's unlikely to happen. Let's say it did.
Mm.
I really think that Richard Dawkins would probably post a cartoon.
Yeah,
I would post a cartoon. I wouldn't doubt that the overwhelming majority, if not pretty much everyone who heard about the story, who had a Twitter or
sure.
Facebook, at least even if they didn't post the cartoon, they wouldn't have issue with posting it.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
It doesn't hurt me to post a cartoon. I don't think it hurts any atheist or post a stupid cartoons of Richard Dawkins.
Well, sure.
I'm
Like,
sure Richard Dawkins, if we asked him,
yeah,
I'm sure he would post it out of solidarity. You have the right to draw this. Now,
yeah,
when but But
Well,
that
well,
but in the case of
hmm,
for Islam, people a lot of Muslims won't post it.
hmm,
Now I understand that to them it's offensive.
yeah,
I understand to a lot it may be, and I understand if they don't post it, they don't have to post it.
yeah, yeah, and
But the thing is when they, I mean there is, I mean, well, I don't have the number right now, but there was a lot of people who thought in England and France that they had it coming. You know, it's like it's
yeah,
not just about the cartoon; it's about the act against those cartoonists.
sure,
And I just don't see the same. I don't see the same public opinion from the atheist community happening. It's not going to be the same percentage. You know,
yeah,
if it's 1%, if it's 0.5% from the Muslim community that says they
yeah,
had it coming, which I doubt it's
yeah,
0.5%. It's probably more.
mm,
I seriously doubt that in the reverse case, if it happened to a person who drew a negative picture of Richard Dawkins, I
yeah,
seriously doubt it would be if there was one atheist who said it. There might be one, but
yeah,
he would be like, you know, if there was 5 or 10 who said it, it would be 5 or 10, and everybody else would be, you know, go fuck off somewhere else. You know, no, nobody agrees with you. You know, so
yeah,
the thing is, it's just, these things are not exactly equivalent. You know,
yeah,
and the thing is, when we talk about Islam, there's too much leeway. It really is the racism of lower expectations. You know, oh, we
yeah,
can't, you know, we don't really want to offend Muslims because they'll act out, and you know, these kinds of things.
sure, and well,
But
like initially when the Danish cartoons actually came out, like I think I'm not sure if it was Reza Aslan that Christopher Hitchens was actually talking to on CNN, but it could have been, who knows. Essentially, like they were like CNN actually they show the cartoons, but they show the cartoons blurred, and Christopher Hitchens immediately said, "You're like the reason why you're blurring these cartoons
it's
is
because
because
yeah, I know that
you
incident.
you,
Yeah,
you don't want to be you don't want reprisals to be acted upon you, and you know like as I said to you a while ago, like you know one of the top clerics of one of the top clerics, Islamic clerics in Ireland, actually sort of he publicly stated that you know like by way of our blasphemy law here, um if any of the papers in like if any of the newspapers in the Republic of Ireland published the Charlie Hebdo cartoons, um, he would make a complaint to the Gardaí, the Irish police, and Michael Nugent, the head of Atheist Ireland, he said like he commented on the situation, stating that you know um, if this cleric actually went to the Gardaí, he would have to sort of substantiate a claim of outrage. So he'd have to either sort of say that he was outraged, or he would have to create some outrage because
well, you know,
of
I know where you're going with this. I mean, like,
yeah,
yeah, so they'd have to produce the outrage and all that, and but you know, there's a huge double standard
sure,
in this conversation that it really pisses me off, because just forget about, I mean, even forget about the issue as far as Mohammed cartoons or Muslims.
yeah,
I mean, in general, even with other religions, with Jews who talk about anti-Semitism and want any anti-Semitic
Scientology,
comment maybe legislated against or censored, or Christians as well. The
Scientology,
huge double Scientology. I mean, I'm not even focusing on Islam right now. All the religions, you know.
yeah,
The thing is, the huge double standard that I can't stand anymore is that atheists have almost accepted is that these laws that censor the offense against the religious,
yeah,
these laws have no interest in what offends atheists. Nothing.
No.
If atheists said, we're offended by this cartoon, who
We'd be
would give a
laughed at.
shit?
Yeah, we'd be
not only
laughed
the
at.
religious wouldn't give a shit, but
Yeah.
even the law in any country, I think, the United States, Europe, anywhere, they say, what are you talking about? Atheists are offended? Who cares? This is no big deal. Oh, you're offending Islam. Oh, you're offending Christians. Oh, you're offending Jews.
Yeah.
I didn't even recognize, offending Jews or the Holocaust or anti-Semitism. That's a big no-no, right? And now it's Jews will, Muslims would say, oh, well, you can't offend Jews, but you can offend Muslims. I would say they're about equal now as people calling you racist if you offend them.
Sure.
But people will say, "Oh, you've offended these religions." Who cares if atheists felt offense? No one gives a damn.
Yeah.
It's like draw a cartoon about Darwin, and let's have let's as a group say we've been offended as an atheist community and we want to sue somebody. Who would take that seriously?
Sure.
The feelings of the atheist community mean nothing to no one. But we are asked.
Yeah.
Atheists are told that as atheists, you better care about the feelings of the religious. It is your obligation.
Yeah.
As a liberal, as a person against racism and bigotry and blah 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 blah. You better care if you're offending Muslims and Jews and things like that. So we're asked to be extra sensitive to the religious community while being told you're not going to get any of that respect back. Forget, your feelings are nothing. No, if you don't have religious feelings, then you have no feelings. You're robots.
Yeah, sure.
And even atheists have incorporated that feeling. Like atheists never point that out. They never say, what about our feelings? It's always the discussion as to whether we're offending the religious or not. I wish atheists would point out that fact. Like, why aren't we talking about how offended I am? Why is this not an issue? Atheists kind of accepted, oh, well, my feelings are never going to be an issue.
Sure, and I'll put it like this. If I was to sort of, if I was to go around my neighborhood with a ream of blank paper and sort of start knocking on doors and say, "Hi, how you doing? My name is Andrew, and I'm an atheist, and this is what I'm preaching." Like I'd be fucking laughed at and told to fuck off.
Right.
Whereas Jehovah's Witnesses are constantly knocking on my door, and I say to them, I'm not interested. See you later. Bye. And they instantly, they're pretty much instantly, the assumption, the temerity that they actually have of actually going to knock on somebody's door, thinking that their faith is somehow superior to the person they're knocking for, or even their doubt, it's like, I think that's outrageous. I think that is I think that's insulting.
Well, I mean that's another good example. For example, I live very close to the Mormons.
Yeah.
There's a Mormon complex, because it's a complex. It's this huge, almost like military base that's very close to my house here in Chile.
Yeah.
And also I also get the Jehovah's Witnesses who knock at my door.
Yeah.
And like, let's say if I from Chile went to Salt Lake City, and started knocking on doors of Mormons and talking about atheism, not only would would they tell me to probably fuck off, but how fast would they call the police? And I would probably be arrested.
Sure.
But can I do that for people who knock on my door every day? Of course not. I doubt in the United States it's very different. You probably also get if an atheist went into the most Christian communities in the United States and started knocking on doors. Yeah. Imagine how quick they'd probably get arrested.
Sure, and like my next door neighbor, she's actually a Mormon. There's a Mormon, in the particular suburb of Dublin I live in. Not only is there a Mormon church, there's a Jehovah's Witness church, and there's kind of like on the outskirts of it, there's like a really sort of small, I wouldn't even call it a mosque, because it's actually it's like a rented room in a business in a business estate for Muslims. But my next door neighbor, she's a Mormon. I love her to death. She's a really nice person. But the thing is, some of her reviews, I I understand that she has them, and I get the substance of it, but I just personally I think it's just really crazy, and we've had instances of Mormon missionaries knocking on our door, looking to sort of try and sign us up, but I like the thing is I see right through it, and I'm
Yeah.
like, thanks very much for your. Actually, I remember one time I was walking to work, and I work not too far from where I live, and like there was two Mormon missionaries at a bus stop, and I was just kind of walking by them. I was like, they're like, "How it is, sir? Can I stop you for a minute?" And I was like, "Oh, holy shit!" And I was like, "Okay, I'm sorry, mate. I can't talk. I have to go punch a clock." But
Right.
they shoved their card into my hand. I was like, "Okay," and I just walked on. And that was like, fair enough. That's a bit of an anticlimax, but like they're just so,
Well,
they
I mean, another thing is there is like I'm sure it happens to you. It happens to me.
yeah.
How many times? I mean, if you ever met someone on the street or at a party, at a dinner party or whatever,
Yeah.
in any case, even people just knocking at your door to talk
Yeah.
about God or whatever. Do you? I mean, I'm sure it comes to you like you don't point out you're an atheist because you kind of don't want to offend them, right? You're
Oh,
like, I don't. I'm not going to mention I'm an atheist. Even I do this, Everyone, every atheist they kind of hold back their atheism. They don't really come out of the closet, let's say. And the thing is the reverse ever true? Dude, if I said I'm an atheist, do you think any religious person would have any problem with telling me I'm a Christian, I'm a Jew, I'm a Muslim? There's no taboo to that. There's no feeling of should I tell them I'm a Christian or not? Of course they're gonna tell me I'm a Christian. But as atheists, we kind of feel bad saying it.
I don't at all
Well,
whatsoever.
you don't. But I mean, has that ever passed like come to mind? Like, maybe I shouldn't bring it up.
Well,
I'm sure it has at some point.
I know, like, well, sure, like, I was born and raised in the Catholic faith. I was confirmed, like, I was confirmed when I was 12 years old. But it was when I was 13 that I actually sort of like started to fall away from Catholicism, and I just thought it was like a whole lot of bollocks. Like, but like my mom died like a couple of years ago, and there was a Catholic mass for her funeral, and like you know as we were about to leave for the church, like I actually feel it's actually part of my own cultural identity. I actually said a decade of the Rosary, and like when I went to church, you know, I took Holy Communion, although I shouldn't have, and I haven't, I don't think I have since. No, I haven't. But I did those things because I felt it was actually like there was some sort of expectation on me to do them, but I didn't have a major problem actually sort of just doing them.
Right.
If you get what I said, like I didn't
Well, I
feel.
mean, yeah, I have a similar background. I think. I mean, I've never been religious ever in my life.
Yeah.
When I was little, I did do my first communion, and I took a religion class when I was very, very little,
Sure.
and I did that. But to me, there was no contradiction in not believing in anything I was doing and kind of doing them because to me it was like almost like celebrating Christmas or Easter. It was just traditions, things you do. It's part of the ritual of life. It never occurred to me that there's any obligated belief behind it.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I mean, I did a lot of those things also as a non-believer as well.
Yeah.
I was never. My parents weren't religious, so I wasn't brought up to believe those things.
Yeah. For sure. But I think we have adequately.
Yeah.
We have talked on about a smorgasbord of issues tonight.
Yeah. we should say that this is the first time we did this. It was
Yeah.
is more organized than I kind of hoped. I think we should
Yeah.
keep it shorter and also more on topic than just
Yeah.
floating around to different issues.
Sure.
Um,
You and Dan Simpson. I'm actually, I'm going to throw this out.
yeah, go ahead.
Tomorrow.
I was thinking, I wasn't sure whether to talk about it or not.
Yeah. Actually, no. It's not tomorrow night. It's next Friday.
So this another. So we met each other on Twitter.
Yeah.
We've Skyped a few times. There's another guy on Twitter who I've talked to. Not a lot. I haven't talked to him. Just in the private messages. It seems like a nice guy. Also an atheist, but very different from me or you. He actually identifies as a social justice warrior, which probably you would have a lot of issue with, right?
I know, I've actually seen a lot of his tweets, and like there's nothing wrong with social justice, but just being just sort of, actually sort of jumping onto a bandwagon for the sake of jumping onto a bandwagon.
Well, I mean, like to not like get into a debate about social justice, but
Yeah.
I don't necessarily I can't say I necessarily agree with everything he said. I actually don't know him that well. Seems like a nice guy. He's tweeted some very intelligent tweets.
Sure.
At least that I've seen. So he came to me with the idea that we should organize together a kind of Twitter chat room, which right now is at. Give me a second. It is at. It's at the atheism chat.
Sure.
At the atheism chat. That's the place where we're going to center it around. So every Friday at noon, Eastern time, America time. It might vary from person to person depending on where you are, but it'll be on Fridays, and we're going to throw out on that chat, on that account, certain questions for people to talk about.
Sure.
So you go to that account. We're gonna have atheist question number 1 or atheist chat number 1, and then we'll throw that out for an hour, and then we'll probably do that for 4 hours, throwing out another question every hour, and
Sure.
and it's to have. I like the idea because it's to bring atheists together at a certain point and talk about a specific subject together at a certain venue on a certain topic. Because I feel like the debates and the conversations of the atheist community on Twitter is very chaotic. It's like I find a tweet, I start arguing with the person I don't know, and then we block each other, we hate each other, goodbye.
Yeah.
And sometimes people find a tweet and they tweet back and they reply to that tweet without having read the thread, and they kind of don't understand the context. Maybe you tweet it sarcastically and it's very obvious in the thread, you don't know. Maybe they're talking about something else. So Twitter's a chaos. So here's something like people can come into and maybe center around a very specific question and things like that. So that's the idea. So we're going to start that next Friday.
Cool.
Yeah.
So thanks to our one viewer who's now gone, we're now down to 0.
I'm sure we've been talking way too long.
But sure.
We should figure out how to take questions from people who view us.
Yeah.
Maybe we should just give our Twitter accounts while we're talking, and then check our Twitter if there's anybody sending us questions.
Sure. Yeah.
And also we can announce this.
Yeah. Well, as soon as we finished up here, I'm gonna post the link, and I'll tweet the link to you, and you can tweet the link out to everyone else of you, like every one of your fans as well, and I call this podcast the Third Rail, because there's a lot of issues and topics that a lot of people, they just don't want to fucking talk about, and they're referred to as third rail topics. Because if you touch
I hadn't even heard of that saying.
Yeah, I know, like the third rail, it's a track, part of train tracks, and if you touch that track, you get electrocuted, and that's why like third rail topics are called third rail topics. And what I'll do is I'll get in touch with you, and we can decide on a topic for next week. And well, Yeah, probably next week, and we can like I'll be in touch with you like probably tomorrow afternoon, and
Yeah. So we should probably cut off the video here since until it gets on
Yeah.
too long.
I'm gonna stop the broadcast.